Thank you, Administrator. Members will be recognized by order of seniority for their 5 minutes of questioning. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. Administrator, you said that, if I heard you right, that some people will have their pay reduced?
Yes, sir. We start to pay the FY23 omnibus appropriation, authorized pay for every single TSA employee. And all we're asking for and all the Congress provided was pay at the same pay scale as every other federal employee, just about. This pay begins on the 2nd of July. People will see it in their direct deposit accounts on the 24th of July. So that pay is already rolling and moving out. We provided letters to every single employee in the agency in April that showed their current pay and their pay under the amounts appropriated by the Congress in FY23. We did that because we wanted them to be aware of what the exact calculation is. We also wanted to make sure that if there were any mistakes or any misunderstandings, we corrected them back in April rather than in July. So the workforce has been aware since the bill passed in December, and certainly on a personal basis, the personal impact to them by individual letter from us, and then with their direct deposits beginning in, towards the end of July.
Were you saying that in fiscal year 24, some people will get their pay reduced?
Yes, sir. And I would add to that
I mean, actually reduced, not in comparison to somebody else, so reduced.
They'll be reduced, yes, sir. They'll be reduced to what it is today.
They'll get a pay increase for how long?
3 months.
3 months, and then it'll go back down.
Right.
Fair enough. I'd like to get that and see the graph of what that impact would be, please. I don't think we were aware of that. All right.
Sure.
All right. Moving on. Your CT scan, your CT machines, with the increase in funding that was of $30 million, and if we assume that that's going to be continuing, you had originally had a completion date of 2042. Right? With $30 million more per year, et cetera, when is that completion right now?
I believe the completion date, sir, was 2042, and that would probably close it up by a year or two. But we're ready, and we have the ability now with the contracts we already have in place. We already know what technology we want to buy. We've tested it. We've put it in operational use. We can spend up to $300 million just on CT machines.
$300 million right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And this would be $300 million not to put machines in warehouses, but to put machines in airports.
Fair enough. Are you working with outside agency like CLEAR to try to offset some of the operational needs that you may have at the airports?
Well, we work with many outside entities, and really that's the strength of our system. We work very closely with airports, with carriers, other providers, and we work very cooperatively with that. I mean, our goal is to make sure that, for me, my North Star is to ensure that we continue to improve security and that everybody in the ecosystem of aviation security and surface security is contributing to that effort.
Move on to Real ID and your timetable for Real ID. What is your timetable for Real ID now?
Sir, the Secretary extended the deadline for Real ID until May of 2024, or 2025, I'm sorry. So it's out a couple of years. We're working very hard to make sure that we hit that deadline date. We work very closely with the states, with the associations that coordinate state activity with departments of motor vehicles, and trying to put a system in place where we provide a gradual level of notification to travelers. For example, let's say for argument's sake, 5 or 6 months out, if somebody comes to our checkpoint, does not have a Real ID compliant driver's license, we orally advise them that, hey, if they don't have a passport, that driver's license cannot be used as their sole identification beginning on the deadline date. And so to really try to get a more personal focus on individuals who have not yet received the Real ID driver's license.
I think it's going to be a problem. I know that my license doesn't expire until 2026, and I don't believe it's Real ID. And the other thing that I do have, so folks that have, say, global entry, and they have an ID card for global entry, I understand that that's not, you can't use that for entry, or can you now?
We have on our website, Chairman, a list of acceptable forms of identification. Most travelers would likely use a passport as a form of identification, which is an acceptable form of ID. If a passenger presents himself at the checkpoint without an acceptable form of ID, we have an alternate resolution process that is time-consuming. And our concern is that if we have a lot of people on the deadline date in '25, it will slow down the process for everyone. That's why we want to get ahead of it as much as we can. We're working very closely with the state DMVs to assess the adoption of Real ID within their new driver's license issuances and trying to keep the messaging out there as strongly as we can.
Fair enough. My